I'm talking with Joe Walther from Cornell University. Joe is the author of Social Information Processing Theory. Joe, what's the theory about?
Social information processing theory is about how people get to know one another and develop relationships when they communicate over computer-mediated communication. So this would be through email, text messaging, computer conferencing, and systems like that we now see commonly over the internet. And the theory suggests that while we don't have the nonverbal cues at our disposal that we traditionally rely on to size up one another, make judgments about one another, and to exchange, give off a lot of social information about who we are and how we feel, that people adapt to the restrictions of the medium by not only looking for clues in the language that people use as they read messages from other people, but they adapt their emotional and their social expressions to the language that they have available, and that dance and that negotiation of identification and relationship development takes place more slowly, but eventually through the language-only context of computer-mediated communication.
Is it possible that all of this information transfer helps us form the impression, and so CMC may be just as good as face-to-face, but that face-to-face is better in the drawing close after the impression is made?
That's an interesting contention. I think the question has to be answered from what kind of intimacy and what kind of relationship is it? I think obviously in the case of romantic love and physical affection, there would be a point at which just chatting online would never get us past a certain point. Obviously the species would not continue if we didn't get together at some point.
I've thought of that.
As we fall in love. And yet in some research we find people like each other better as they work together online than the groups in parallel who are working face-to-face. So not all intimacy is equal, and we don't yet know what you can't do online. It is amazing that people are not only falling in love online, but experiencing sexual arousal with one another online. And so I don't know that we have really seen the upper limit of what's possible yet.
There's an old joke about the long-distance relationship where the fella wrote the girl a letter every day for 2 years, and she finally married the postman.
Right.
Could that happen in CMC? I mean, could they develop an affection for their computer because of the message?
I wouldn't go so far to say it's falling in love with the computer. Could they fall in love with the medium? Could they think CMC is the greatest thing? You know, we have anecdotal cases, not me personally, but there is some published accounts and many accounts on the internet of people who will tell you that the internet is the greatest way to meet people ever discovered. There's no risk. You don't have to put it out there and embarrass yourself. People fall in love with you because of your mind, not your body. And so people have become enamored with this medium as a way to socialize. Interestingly enough, people also hate the medium when it gets in the way. It's too slow. You can't tell what somebody is really like. People will lie to you online. And so people distrust the medium rather than distrusting the people who are using the medium. So I'm not sure someone would fall in love with the computer the way this person fell in love with the postman. But people develop very strong attitudes about the medium, either for good or for bad, rather than thinking about the people behind it. I find that very, very amazing.
How about in terms of whether it's good for us or not? I interviewed a theorist 6 years ago who talked about the ice cream death by chocolate, saying that if she had the chance, she'd eat it all the time, but it wouldn't be good for her. Could that be true on internet usage, that you could love it, but that it really not be good for you?
The studies are not quite conclusive. They seem to suggest that people who already have problems, who are escaping from those by spending a lot of time online, are not in fact doing themselves any good. It doesn't help offset the social deficits that they had in the first place. And so it may be like the ice cream death like chocolate. It's too attractive but bad for you in the long run.
My students, knowing that I was going to interview, made a list of things on the internet that are worrisome. Over 50% of email spam, web blogs that lie, identity theft, sexual predators, pornography being rampant, people portraying who they are when they aren't, flaming, occasionally fierce, viruses spreading. Given all this, what is your code of ethical behavior that you recommend?
Well, it is a scary world on the internet. It's like a big city, isn't it? I mean, there are frauds, there are hucksters, there's advertisements everywhere in a big city with people speaking different languages. One should approach the internet the way you approach a big city where you don't know your way around. And that's with caution. There will also be a lot of culture in a big city and a lot of interesting people to meet also. But I think it's important to remember to know in which environments you are playing and know in which environments you are not. The internet has a lot of great places to play where people are almost encouraged to experiment with identity, to see what it's like to not be yourself, to exaggerate about certain attributes, and to hold back things that you may not like to disclose. Adults don't get to play with identity in very many places the way kids in a sandbox get to. And that's where I think a code of ethics becomes very important. Knowing when you're playing and knowing when people are counting on you to be truthful about yourself, about what you're going to deliver and when you said. Ultimately, when it counts in relationships, professional or personal ones, delivery and people's vulnerability to your delivery is what's going to define a relationship and the quality of the kind of person you are. Those, I think, are important ethical codes. The internet partly is for play, and it's partly for work and for trust. And keeping those arenas distinct is probably a good ethical approach.
Do you have advice for the person who wants to move from CMC alone to meeting in person?
Share information with other parties that someone else can corroborate. And so if you can point to a photo on your company's website or your college's website that somebody knows you didn't doctor and you didn't select, that's probably going to be more valuable information for somebody who wants a photo than one that you just send as an attachment to an email message. So information that is not manufactured by yourself, which reflects you nevertheless, that helps people trust that they have real perceptions of one another. That's important before the face-to-face meeting.
Would social information processing or the hyper-personal perspective have something to say about a relationship where you meet first and then maintain the relationship through CMC?
The theories are not designed to cover those instances.
But if the theories weren't designed to talk about multi-mode relationships, isn't the scope of the theory very narrow?
That's an important question. That's, of course, one of the things we like research to do. Research should show us that the scope can be enlarged or is indeed more narrow than the theorist anticipated. And that's why we're still plugging away at this. Well, if the theories can help us understand how people become acquainted up to the point where they finally meet face-to-face, that's still not bad. At the same time, if it only applies to people who have never met face-to-face, that would be a limitation in scope. It's exciting to see that they might expand or might collapse.
Is being a theorist a dangerous occupation?
It's risky.
Risky, but not dangerous.
I've had some enjoyable sessions with my students and colleagues the last year as we've worked on some other projects, as we've tried to hypothesize through. On more than one occasion, we've reached into our wallets and pulled out $1 and thrown it on the table and said, I bet you we're going to see this. And somebody has countered and said, I bet you we're going to see that. And we've realized that hypothesis generating is a gambling game.